It's great to have us here. So just be running straight into today's session. I hope that our August has been fine. This month has had plenty rain and plenty things in the media. We're grateful that we are here. So I'll just start by our usual ground rules. Welcome to HeyCoach. HeyCoach is an initiative from the Development, Empowerment, and Leadership Initiative. And it is one of the initiatives from Titiloye where we come to crowdsource knowledge. We come to speak to ourselves based on to answer questions that as concern our career, our businesses, things that help us to move forward. And so it has been on for 4 years now, 3 years. This is the fourth year. And so this is not a training. So it's not like one person is coming with a suit and tie to talk to us. It's not like somebody is coming to teach us. We are all teaching ourselves. We try as much as possible to keep to time. The meeting room is open as early as 30 minutes to the program. And yes, we give everybody the opportunity to speak, and if possible, just stick to 2 minutes contribution. All right. So we have a Telegram community where we drop resources and we crowdsource ideas. You could just join that. We will drop the link for that to that community shortly. And please, by all means, we want you to volunteer. TMAC is, I'm sure that some of us might be wondering, I should have started with that. Now, where's TMAC? TMAC is going to join us, but he's not going to be speaking, he's in transit. So my face today, yay. All right, so yes, so let's move. Last month, we began a series titled Winning in a Changing World of Work. And I'm going to just do a very brief recap as we proceed so that we'll be up to speed with where we started from. So winning in a changing world of work. This image on the home screen is very telling. You can see the early man in his elements, right? And we see the transition as he proceeds to the different eras and up to the last era on the right, which is the future of work. So the future of the landscape of work is changing, and we're asking ourselves, are you poised to win? All right. So this slide says, work is about a search for daily meaning as well as daily bread, for recognition as well as cash, for astonishment rather than torpor. In short, for a sort of life rather than a Monday through Friday sort of dying. So we established in the first part that work is important to our lives, and as we see down the line, to some people, work is that boredom, that's my daily bread. How can I get my daily bread? But it should be more of meaning because we spend so much time at work. All right, so moving on, we took the story of Tolu, who we see that she just finished NYC. She got a job, a remote job with an international organization. And there was this interesting conversation with her dad where he was saying that I don't think you, this lady, are working. Like, what kind of work are you doing? Because in our day, we didn't used to work like this. You dress up, you go to the office, spend time in one place of work, and the dynamics had changed. So, Tolu didn't argue. She just tried to help her dad see how things had changed, right? And in our own world, it wasn't about having to go to a physical space. It was more about collaboration. It wasn't about age. It was more about productivity. It wasn't about, just showing up or doing the motion, but about what a person could offer. And then we, excuse me, we went through the research, excuse me, and the World Economic Forum report says that 23% of jobs change by 2027. The McKinsey Global Survey also showed that 40% of organizations expect to reskill more than 20% of their workforce within the next 5 years. I think this was a 2023 study, 2024, and similar research has shown that work is changing, so we need to change along with it. All right. And in the psychological space, studies show that to derive meaning, for a person to have meaning in their life, they needed a form of work. And that is why we are here to speak about it. They also found that work that aligned with a person's strength and values and autonomy led to greater satisfaction. So yes, let's move on. Key concepts. We established that. Can we still hear me, please? Can we still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, so we established that meaning is skill plus purpose. We established that man's search for meaning can be satisfied when it combines the skill plus purpose. We also established that in the expression of that the expression is when they can combine the skills plus purpose plus impact. And on the right here, we see that one of the key concepts that makes work important is that it creates value. And when value comes, then there will definitely be reward to follow. Lastly, we said that for many people, work defines who they are, right? So I'll just skip through this, that work is not punishment. Work is, in fact, work came before relationship, work came before community. And we can see that from the biblical example of Adam, right? So work is for survival, work is for identity and social status. Just take anybody, and you ask them to introduce themselves. You find out that there's a likelihood that they are going to say their name and then say what they do. Because this just goes on to tell us that work is, for many of us, that's become part of our fabric. So before we say 5 sentences, we talk about what we do. We spend a third of our day at work anyway, so it's important that we make sure that that work is something that is very dear to us. And thirdly, we said that work is therapeutic. Yes. All right. So there's this quote: in every man's heart, there is something he must do, not just to live, but to feel alive. Right? Okay, so like I said earlier, we spend about a third of our time at work. If you don't win at work, then, okay, sorry, if you win at work, your life will be meaningful, you have productivity, you create value, you'll be fulfilled, you grow, and you have that influence. You have influence, you have solid identity and legacy. And on the flip side, if a person does not win at work, there's that likelihood that they will have frustration, there'll be burnout, there'll be financial instability, there'll be regrets, So it is important that, once again, work is established. So we are going through all of this just to remind us about those basic principles we established in the first part of this series. All right. So now we are going into today's content, and it is an interesting one because we are like going on a story, we are going on a ride. And I want to implore that we come along on this ride so that we can enjoy it together. So Let me take this away. All right, so we want to speak about the evolution of work across 9 dimensions. And the dimensions here are the worker profile, the office, the work culture, management styles, leadership styles, career expectations, reward and compensation, technology, and the meaning of winning. So before we start, is there anybody who can tell me the errors that we have had, the errors that man has experienced since the beginning of time? Anybody? I'd like to hear from us in the audience. Anybody? I'm actually going to call names. So which errors do you know? Okay, in the audience, I can see John T. Looks like somebody used the link but didn't rename themselves. So please rename your device. Let everyone please rename their device. So I can see Egunaike Mudukwe. Ma, what errors do you know from the history of man? Is Egunaike Mudukwe there, ma? Right, I'll be going to T-squared then. So T-squared, what errors can you remember or do you know from history of man?
Is it the ancient era?
Okay. Do you remember any other one?
Mm,
Okay. So
yeah.
thank you. So the ancient era is very invalid. But it can be broken into a number of eras, and as we will see very shortly. All right. So thank you. Now, the first area we're going to be discussing is drum roll, the hunter-gatherer era. All right. Does anybody remember or have an idea what the hunter-gatherer era was? There's Titilayo and there's T-squared. If you okay, sorry, T-squared is best just now. So Titilayo and John T. Please rename your device John T because there can only be one John T. Anyway, so please rename your device and tell us what you know about the hunter-gatherer era. How about Titilayo? Maybe the person is in transit. How about Titilayo? Can you speak? Are you able to speak where you are? Or type in the chat box. Okay. So let's run along. I will go and project the slides for excuse me. My system is acting up.
In the meantime, while you're doing that, I can read what I Googled. It says the hunter
Okay, thank
gatherer
you.
era refers to the earliest and the longest phase of human history, when humans survived primarily by hunting animals and gathering wild plants rather than farming or raising livestock.
Great. Thank you. That is spot on. So here on this other slide, we are just going to be looking through what the hunter-gatherer era was. All right. So now, as you read very rightly, thank you. This era had people just gathering. And as you see here, it's happened 2.5 million years to about 10,000 BCE. That's before Christ, and that's before the modern calendar was began to be in circulation or in operation. So the the hunter-gatherer era, I mean, 2.5 million years is a very, very, very long time ago. It is extremely long, if I can use that word. And we see that the profile of the worker here is was everyone. So the family, the tribes, everyone was involved in working. And as we proceed, I'd like you to see the trend. I'd like you to see the pattern of things, how it went. So I'm just going to go to that slide. Oh, sorry. Right.
I think I like that era because they eat fresh food. They're like point and kill.
Yes. It wasn't like a time when a person would have to be
Preserve,
using,
fridge,
yes, all these
microwave.
on fresh foods.
Yes,
Anyway,
so
so can you see my screen now?
mm-hmm.
I hope
Yes.
that okay, but I hope it's better now. How about this? Ah, oh my goodness. This worked earlier, but I think there's just a technicality that is stopping me from sharing it. Anyway, so we will just have to do the old school method then. My apologies for my technical issues. So we just do old school then. So here you have it, the hunter-gatherer era. So here's a profile of the worker. It was everyone, right? So here we see that the worker was everyone. They were survival focused individuals skilled in hunting, gathering, and tool making. So every single person, from the child to the small one, to the father, to the mother, they were involved in this era. And it is interesting because it is about survival. It's not, it's not about can you do this or can you not? It's about survival. So every single person here was involved in working. The roles were defined by physical ability, environmental knowledge, and group needs. So it wasn't, sorry about that. Okay, so the roles were defined by physical ability. So it's about strength, it's about intellect, it's about how you're able to understand the environment. And we can see that from some olden day movies. Sometimes it's interesting to watch some of those movies because you have an idea of how things went. In these times, if this man here in this picture is trying to identify some herbs, if you should go and make a mistake and take a poisonous leaf, and that's the end. So these people had to rely on experience. They had to rely on experience. They had to rely on a knowledge of the environment. They had to rely on group needs. Some of these things that we are discussing, I want you to please just look as we populate the table, because that table is a grid. That this is going to be a grid where we'll share across and we'll go across the different eras, across these different um sorry. All right, so we are going to populate this. We're going to populate it. Now, back to the profile of the worker. The last point here says that they were adaptable to changing seasons, resources, and traits. So the profile of the worker, number one, is that everyone did it, and it was survival based. It was like they were in clans, they were in groups, and so that was what made everyone to be survival focused. And the roles were defined by their ability, and this was more physical than any other thing. This was more physical than any other thing. So it was not does the strong shall live. The strong shall live. So yes, adaptable to changing seasons, resources, and threats. Now let's go and see what the office was. Can anybody here tell me what office means to them? What does office mean to you? We have five more people here. What does office mean to you, please? Anybody? What does office mean to you?
Where we work.
Where we work. Thank you very much. So this criteria is discussing what was the office for the hunter-gatherer in their era, and we see that it was everywhere. Have been in the wild, in the forest, in the plains, anywhere and everywhere was work. Everywhere and anywhere was work. Let's go a little deeper and see the office the of the hunter-gatherer. What does this remind you of, this picture? What does this office remind you of? Or this picture rather? Get the idea of a safari out in the open, out in the wild. That's the office. Like we saw in that grid, it was that it was anywhere and everywhere they moved to. So let's see quickly. Nature was a primary workplace, forests, plains, rivers, etc. So if it means that maybe these people realized that there was a lot of food around caves, or they were able to catch birds or animals or things that they could kill around caves, then that would be where they would that would be where they would live. That was the office, and they were moving around based on it. It reminds you of nomad, right? It reminds you of how nomads live their lives. And it seems very simple. It feels like such a simple kind of life, well, honest, So moving on, movements followed food sources and climates. Similar to birds, you see, when birds have migratory patterns, they move when, for example, the penguins, when it's mating season, when it's breeding season, they move, and um, depending on how cold or hot it is, that's when they move. And in your mind, you can start drawing parallels to our current day and age now, because it was such a long time ago. Right. So the third point says workspace created temporarily around campfires or shelters, just like this image here. And it's interesting that these days you see people want to have a taste, a feel of those experiences. You see people want to you see they go camping, they want to go into nature, they want to experience things the way it was in the initial before time, before the whole before we had what we have right now. So, all right. Now, the next slide tells us about culture. All right. So the work culture. Can you still see my screen? What screen can you see right now, please? Because I'm switching now, I want to be sure that I've not lost anybody. What screen are you seeing, please?
Can see the table.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. All right, so the work culture. What was the work culture? Can anybody imagine or guess what they think the work culture was for the hunter-gatherer? We've established that these people were were the 2.5 million years ago, people, right? So what do you think work culture was in that time? I mean, these days we talk about, okay, let me give you an example. We talk about um, toxic workspaces, talk about having a culture that encourages participation, all of that. Let's proceed. So the work culture was survival driven and collective. It was a collective thing, right? So we'll see that shortly. You can see these people gathered around a fire telling tales. um, Tales by Moonlight is a very great thing because it helps to pass down culture by folklore. It helps to pass down the norms, the happenings, the very fabric of a people. So here we see that they had strong dependence on community and shared survival goals. They had strong dependence on community and shared survival goals, oral traditions, storytelling, and rituals to pass down knowledge. This person keeps calling. Let me just, I'm in a session, please. All right. Sorry about that. So oral traditions, storytelling, and rituals to pass down knowledge. Okay, I wanted to ask us, I mean, do we have anybody here who has experiences of Tales by Moonlight? Any Tales by Moonlight experiences? Any of those at
In real
all?
life, or did we watch the movie?
No, in real life. In real life.
Ah. One time, village setting kind of.
Hmm.
It's pretty interesting.
What do you remember from that kind of experience?
The collectiveness, the story, listening, full attention.
Yeah, yeah, it was nice because for me, I don't have so much of that. I don't have so many memories of that. But the very few I have, they are so precious. I remember quite a number of them, even though they've been so long. It's been so long, but I still remember them. And I was joking with a friend recently about how do we want to pass this thing to our children like this? Because it is from Grok and AI that they are getting their own information from. Anyway, I should not get ahead of myself, but some of these traditions we can see in the second point that talks about oral traditions, storytelling, and rituals. That was the popular way for passing down information. And let's not forget that we're talking about in the era of work. So um, this is not just a sociology class. This is actually, we're trying to talk about how work has evolved over the time. All right. So deep connection to nature and spiritual beliefs tied to the land. All right, so the very, very next point here is management styles. And we see that it was elders, leaders, and it was a custodial kind of thing. Elders, leaders, and custodial. So it was more of a gerontocracy kind of management. How do you manage work? Nowadays, we have the management team, we have the leadership team, we have all of that. So it was elders, leaders, and the custodians. So leadership was based on skill, wisdom, and proven success in providing for the group, right? Also, decisions were made collectively in councils or through consensus. And thirdly, authority was earned through respect rather than formal structures. So I'm imagining somebody's looking for organogram. You know, organogram is what shows the power, what shows how things are managed in our day and age. But here we see that authority was earned through respect rather than formal structures. And moving on, I'm going to go to the we're going to go to the leadership style. Please, if anybody has any question as we proceed, please don't hesitate to ask. And for people who just joined, I want to implore you to rename your device, rename your your device so that everybody's not bearing John C. Because like I said earlier, there cannot be only one John C. So we don't want we want you to represent yourself so that you'll be as unique as our hunter-gatherer. Anyway, now leadership styles. Somebody might ask, let me ask, please, what is the difference between management and leadership? Anybody, what's the difference between management and leadership? I would like to hear our response. Somebody speaking?
Yes, management is following the process that is already laid down, managing the situation. While in a leader has the ability to be creative, to inspire, to influence, motivate, or is a goal setter, like it's always after the vision and the mission of whatever is set ahead of them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So you can see that management seems to just wants to follow the set down or lay down processes. And leadership is more about inspiring. They are both, we have both of them. We have both of them in, or they are both needed in every organization. But leadership is more about inspiring them rather than just trying to follow rules. All right, so here we'll be speaking about the leadership style of the hunter-gatherer era. And we see that also it was elders, leaders, directive, and autocratic. So very quickly, let's continue. Now, leadership styles. You can see in this image, there's someone in the front and is there. So leaders led by example, demonstrating courage and resourcefulness. Also, there was a focus on protecting the group and ensuring equitable resource distribution, often temporary or institutional, shifting with the group's needs. So it wasn't like there was just one leader who would try to do like one particular African country that I would not mention, who was there for I think about 50 years. And even though he was sick, he still wanted to continue. All right. So the next is career expectation. For all of us, for every kind of work, there's some expectation about what we want to see. And we see that in that hunter-gatherer era, it was generational and expertise was over time. So here we see that mastery of essential survival skills was the only career path. Because, I mean, it's about survival, right? So you just wanted to survive. You didn't even know any other thing. And somebody mentioned how it was such a blissful life. We'll see how blissful that was and whether there are questions to ask. Would you rather have come in that era or or some other one? Let's see. So roles could change with age, ability, and environmental changes. And lastly, recognition came from contribution to group survival, and it wasn't about individual achievements. Let's move very quickly. Reward and compensation. So it was about, like you said, if there's any theme that is very, that occurs throughout this hunter-gatherer, you can see it is survival. It is survival. It is survival, right? So it was about surviving to eke out a living. And the reward and compensation was rewards was shared resources, food, shelter, safety, social standing increased with consistent contributions to the group's well-being, and honor and respect served as intangible rewards. Second to the last was the technology that they had in this period. Over time, they developed things, they developed some technology, and technology is in quotes, right? But it was more about brute strength, more about relying on their brute. So, well, yes, they now eventually made simple tools from stone, bone, wood, etc. And they discovered fire, and this this was great. They also discovered clothes from animal hides for protection and adaptation to climates. I have a story to tell us. Some weeks ago, I was involved in the the butchering of a rabbit. Before you look at me as a savage person, maybe butchering is the wrong word, but my point is I didn't want to use the K word. Anyway, we were able to, in the end, we had pot of soup of rabbits. But that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is I was very fascinated by the skill, by the hide of that rabbit. It was so thick, like it was so insulated that I could practically get warm by just wrapping it on my arm. So it makes you thankful to God for such wisdom. When you look at some animals like the polar bears, like the Arctic foxes, like some of these animals in the wild in very cold regions, they have thick layers of fur. And the early man, the hunter-gatherer, learned how to skin them to make clothes for himself. So they were hunters anyway. And so that's the technology that they discovered. All right. And now back to our table. What was the meaning of winning? Let's not forget that this whole venture is to know what meaning wins. And by the time we are done, we would have seen meaning of winning across different eras and what it means for us today. Someone might wonder why we are going through all of this. Once again, it's so that it can help us to understand how people have adapted over the time and what we can learn from their lessons. So I'm trying to bring out a point here that says that what each era uh, what each era had about change and adaptability and how we can apply this to our work and business. All right, so the meaning of winning was that success in hunting and being able to feed. It was such a simple life, if you ask me, just about feeding and surviving, that was what it meant to them, right? The meaning of winning, you see that it was about ensuring the survival of self and community, having enough food, water, and shelter to withstand harsh seasons, and passing on skills, traditions, and survival knowledge to the next generation. All right, so we are going to be moving on to the next era, and that was the agricultural era. Before we move to the agricultural era, does anybody have any question from this first era we discussed from the hunter-gatherer era? So this is the completed table of the hunter-gatherer era. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm good.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for responding. Anybody else? Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. Anybody else? You can drop an emoji. Please drop an emoji in the chat or say something so that we can know that I can know you are following. Please drop an emoji or unmute yourself and speak before we proceed. I need that response.
I'm fine.
Okay, great. Thank you, Demark. Okay, can see reaction. Thank you very much. This John C has not renamed themselves. Please rename yourself so I can know who is speaking. All right, thank you very much. Let us continue. So, the agricultural era We'll try to be fast so that we can move on quickly. Agricultural era, the profile of the worker was mostly men-led, family-centered. Start to see the pattern, start to see the shift. All right. Mostly men-led, family-centered. Now we go to our slides. You can see this man hard at work, right? So in the agricultural era, we see that it was primarily farmers, herders, and craft specialists working within rural communities. Labor was physical, seasonal, and tied to land ownership or feudal obligations. All right. So it was mostly men-led, and it was about farming, about having animals, and also about some crafts. What was the office? The office was land away from the home. Wherever there was land to work, that was the office. So we see in this picture here, it's very beautiful. And honestly, this is the kind of, on a personal note, I like this kind of life because, I mean, you're growing your own food, you don't seem to have any stress. The first time in the hunter-gatherer era, I said how nice it was to have such a simple life. But I think I want to change my mind to this agricultural era. You can see that, I mean, who doesn't want fresh vegetables? Who doesn't want vegetables that you didn't have to grow with fertilizer or or banana that was force ripe? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Because I'm in Lagos in Nigeria, and sometimes when you want to buy vegetables, when you want to buy fruits, it's like they have to force ripe it. They have to doesn't taste as fresh as that. So for now, I'm changing my mind. Changing my mind. I am coming to this agricultural area. That's my favorite for now. All right. So tools and materials were stored locally, often at the workers' home or a shared community space. And when it happened, administrative work was in the temples, in the palaces, or local council houses. Right? Now, what was the work culture? It was designed for the strongest. If you remember from the first point, we said that they relied a lot on strength, on the brunt, on how powerful you are. That was one of the things that they relied on in the hunter-gatherer era. And that's similar here too, because the work culture favored the strongest. Yes? So let's see quickly. It was deeply community-oriented. Cooperation was vital for survival, harvest success. Traditions and rituals strongly influenced work rhythms and timing. And lastly, work and life were deeply intertwined. There were no clear boundaries between home and work. There were no clear boundaries between what was home and what was work. So they were very, very deeply intertwined. All right. Now we'll be going to management styles. Transactional. Give me, I give you. Right? Give me, I give you. Here, there was informal leadership, often by elders or respected figures in the community. Decisions were made through consensus or tradition rather than formal authority. And finally, instructions were verbally passed down through storytelling or demonstration. As we continue, we see leadership style was by elders or through elders, leaders, and directives, which was autocratic in nature. Okay, right. Authority came from wisdom, age, and proven skill rather than position. So there was a little mix of both of those styles of leadership. Career expectations was generational, and expertise was over time. This is similar to the hunter-gatherer era, where the career expectations was also by expertise over time. This image is telling, we can see an elderly man, and we can see a younger, a middle-aged lady, and then these children are learning from the other person. Careers were inherited. Most people worked the same trade or farm, their family had for generations. Yeah. Longevity in work was expected. Retirement wasn't a norm. Social mobility was rare. So they weren't moving careers. Reward and compensation was yield, harvest, and acquisition. I love this next picture very much because we can see how they have such a bountiful harvest. And this was what reward felt like. Compensation was largely in kind, food, shelter, protection, and sometimes a small share of harvest. Social recognition was a reward in itself. And we see that this also continues to our current day and age, right? Strength and hand tools were the notable technology of the day. We see that they started introducing using plow, using animals to farm, using simple agricultural tools and inventions. Yes, plows, sickles, bows, irrigation systems. Now, I want us to split these points. Innovations were slow and passed down generationally, but vital to productivity. Even though it was slow, it was still vital to productivity. What did winning mean? Winning meant workforce expansion. So, how many wives can you marry? How many children can you have? That was meant to win. Because the more children you had, the greater your workforce and the more relevant you became. So owning land, which would which would give abundant harvests, ensuring family survival and community bonds. And this last point about leaving something for your generation was very important. Let's take the next points and see we'll stop there for today. And the next one is the pre-industrial era. This was about the 9th century to the mid-18th century. Now, someone will be asking that, I thought you said that, let me go to the beginning of the agricultural. For the agricultural, we said it was from 10,000 BCE to 18th century. So someone will be wondering, how come you're having so much encroachment? It's because the agricultural era is one that it's faced very, very uh, slowly into pre-industrial era, and they worked hand in hand. So this is not to say we're not farming today. We're just saying that this was, excuse me, the agricultural era was the predominant, agriculture was the predominant practice. Excuse me. All right. So I will switch quickly to the next, which is the pre-industrial. Okay, so from this image, from this image on the screen, what do we think was the predominant work in this pre-industrial era? I'm going to be calling names, so please prepare to be called. Does anybody watch Merlin? Anybody watch Merlin? Anybody watch Merlin? Okay, someone said they did. Okay, so what do you think was the predominant job in this era? Okay, we'll see very shortly. So the worker was also very similar to the agricultural era. I told you that we mentioned that they were intertwined. Was mostly men-led and family-centered, right? So roles were tied to land, peasants or serfs, or skilled crafts. Skills were developed through apprenticeship or inherited from family. And work was physically demanding, often dictated by seasonal cycles. So communities were the markets. I'm going to take the office and work culture together. The communities were the markets, and there was hierarchical, it was hierarchical, and there was little mobility. Also, we see that there was a lot of specialization at this time. So let's just move to the slide that talks about what the office was. We can see this market scene, it's a bustling market scene, and the office, that's where work happened, was farms, was workshops, was guild halls, and those were the places where work really happened. The work was centered around proximity to resources like land, like markets, like materials, like the resources that they needed, whether they needed to dig into the ground, whether they needed to produce it. We can say that this was a pre-industrial era. So those resources, there was a limit to how they could exploit the resources, and they had to move. Now, the home was often both living and working space. In the last era, we mentioned that there was hardly any difference between work and home. And similar to this, the home was both the living and working space, right? The culture was hierarchical, like we said earlier. There was strong community ties, and religion heavily influenced work and routines. Now, management style for the pre-industrial, or if you like, the artisanal era, it was also hierarchical and transactional. As we see in this point, feudal lords controlled agricultural workers through obligation and protection. So we are beginning to see how there is a transition from everybody on your own to people having the say over others, people having the authority, people having that domination over others. Because now we can see feudal lords, we can see the rise of hierarchy. Guild masters enforced standards, trained apprentices, and protected trade secrets. You can see that now they are beginning to have secrets that are trading, that they are keeping. These days they talk about gatekeeping things. It didn't just start because when information is scarce, then it becomes more valuable. And when it's more valuable, then you become more important. And when you become more important, then well, really, you've won. So these trade secrets were kept very closely. And authority was largely unquestioned and tied to status or land ownership. Now, the leadership style here was also autocratic and directive. Here we see a man giving direction to his workers, and leaders held both economic and social power. It was largely paternalistic, offering protection in exchange for loyalty and labor. This image we can see is all men, right? So this seemed to be the pattern. If you can let me quickly go here, from the profile of the worker, it was largely from everyone to mostly men. Now we are seeing mostly men led. Are we going to see a change as we proceed? It's a question we should watch out for. In craft settings, leadership balanced skill mastery with economic control. Career expectations, once again, generational and expertise over time. So these points are repeated for the career expectations for the different people in those generations. Right? Most workers inherited occupations from their family. This man is a watchmaker, watch repairer. His father before him was a watch repairer, and his grandfather before him was a watch repairer. Hmm. If I ask us here, For those of us on the call, how many of us are doing the same thing our parents did? For those of us on this call, how many of us just drop an emoji if you are doing something similar to what your parents did? Please drop an emoji or unmute and speak. Do you have anybody here who is doing what their parents did? I am not. So anybody?
If you say you're not, any being in your own job now, yeah, I'm doing what my attitude did though.
Are they
Mm.
okay? Can you share what that job was?
Oh, we're getting. I just have a skill. She's very meticulous. So,
Mm.
and I grew up literally trying to. It's part of me because I grew up with that.
Mm.
So she's very caring. She was a nurse. I'm using my caring in the angle of being a chaplain as a volunteer, like a pastor, I don't know, chaplain, that's the word. So helping, praying for people, ministering. Oh my, I'm shy. Yeah, so I'm she's caring and I took that up from her and I'm just naturally caring.
Nice, nice. So you're referring to a trait, you're referring to a personality trait that you grabbed or you learned, you garnered from her, right?
Correct.
Yes, but now I was asking about the specific,
Career.
yes, the specific work,
Okay.
the
Okay.
specific job that she did or that your parents did. So so yes, the personality trait is great. It's great to pick those up. But is anybody here on this call who is doing the exact thing their parents did? Yes, no, yes, no. Okay, so I'll take that as a no. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing a no and that no in the chat. Okay, so let's quickly continue. So we did that digression because we see that most workers in this pre-industrial age inherited their occupations from their parents, and we see that with that man in the image. Upward mobility was rare and slow, usually through marriage or patronage. And lastly, apprenticeship offered a long-term path to independence for artisans. Apprenticeship offered a long-term path to independence for artisans. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Reward. It was returns, profits, rich customers. That was the reward that the people in this age really experienced. Agricultural workers were compensated with food, shelter, or protection. We talked about the feudal laws. So artisans earned through barter or coin for their products, and guild membership offered both protection and limitation on earnings. Now, what was the technology that was the technology of the day? Still was hand tools, but we begin to see craftsmanship and strength continues. So the technology here, we see a plane or someone, a carpenter who is working on wood. Um, we had things like water wheels, windmills began to see it. So the technology we have, the wind technology that we have right now, as we are touting as sustainable energy, it was during this period that it was discovered and they began to use it. Innovations were slow to spread, often protected by trade secrecy. And last but not least, craftsmanship. So what did winning mean? It was our craftsmanship, reputation, profit, and acquisition. Here we see a potter who has his customized, whose name is customized on his pot, on his pottery work. And for peasants, meaning meant they were securing enough harvest to survive the year. For artisans, it was earning a reputation for exceptional quality and skill. And for the elites, expanding land holdings, influence, and wealth. I want you to notice the fact that already beginning to have social strata. We're already beginning to have, nowadays we say middle class, and now in the middle class we have upper middle class, we have the middle class, we have the lower middle class. We can see that strata, and we began to see this proliferate in this period. All right. That's that brings us to the end of the pre-industrial or feudal era. And this I would like to pause here for today, but before we stop, I want to ask us what's our most preferred era is from the three that we've done and why. So I want to ask us in the audience, I'm leaving this table here. So what was your most preferred era and why? And I would really appreciate if we can all speak. What was your most preferred era and why? Anybody? Actually, it's not just anybody. We have people here on this call, so I'd like us to please speak. What was your most preferred era? From these three we've spoken about so far. Anybody? Can you still hear me?
We can hear you. I'm trying to process this. I think I'll still go with the um hunter era, the
Okay.
hunter-gatherer era.
Okay. Why would you go with that era?
The leadership skills in there, it's pretty challenging and it's motivating because you start from the scratch. Um, to be creative compared to the agricultural part where you know you can start cultivating and all, but now you're just really on your own. There's a So you have to be able to create the vision to know that you're applying the smart goals in order to be able to achieve and then you have to be very meticulous. The way you talked about, if that person is trying to separate the weed from the plant that is medicinal, you don't want to give them the poison. So
Mm.
it's more technical, but it's very challenging. So I think I like the challenge ahead of me in the
Nice,
leadership
nice,
style.
nice. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your participation and for your points on this. Anybody else want to tell us about their preferred era? Anybody else want to tell us about their preferred era? Um, okay, hunter-gatherer. I hope you also remember that this hunter-gatherer era, it was you against the wild beasts. You had to fight the wild beasts to survive, you know, and you
I
had
am
to
more
start.
than a conqueror. Nothing doing.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Great. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So it's nice, and we see that each of these eras has in quotes their good and their bad, and that is because there are no absolutes, and it was important that those eras come through what they came through for us to have the next era, and so it's great that we had that. So all right, let me zoom sharing my screen. And do we have any questions? Does anybody have any questions? We will be ending here for today. And thank you very much for your participation because, Timak wasn't around here. So I'm grateful that we had the responses we had so that I don't just be me talking to myself. So does anybody have any question? Right? We have taken contributions anyway. Just to remind us that we can join the HeyCoach community on Telegram. Let me just drop that here. That is, yes, so that is, let's drop the link to join the HeyCoach community. Excuse me. And also to remind us that we can connect with us on our social media pages. If you have questions, you can send an anonymous message to the group, or you could use the email address here or any of the admins on the page to answer questions. I heard a question in the past week that was quite interesting, and it just, my heart was warmed because this person got the answer they needed, and it just reminded me about the reason why these are going on, the reason why we have community. Because when you're in community, you don't suffer alone. You are able to have a shoulder that you can rest on, and that is why it's important that we have some form of community as we navigate our work and family and entrepreneurship journeys. All right, so thank you everyone. I'm going to be sharing the poll for HeyCoach. Things look different because I am the one starting to do things, not just being on the background. So I'm sharing the poll to talk about how today was. Okay, so that poll has come on. If you could please just respond, appreciate that. So please respond to the poll. So we can continue, we can end today's program. Right, thank you very much. Thank you for your responses. Please keep them coming. Thank you very much. We use this in preparing for the next and future sessions. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, with that, we've come to the end of today's session. And thank you very much for participating. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening, rest of your week, and see you next month. Thank you, everyone.